So guys, welcome to Newswave. Now, there's quite a bit of stuff that's happened in the past 24 hours. Nintendo gets their NPD PR out there for the entire sales month of April. So we get a word on the systems that sold and Mario Kart 8 in particular at Mario Kart Deluxe, how well that did. So let's just get started here, guys. And really, let's just talk about these NPD numbers because they're very impressive if you look at them compared to the other numbers that are next to them. Because I know a lot of people saw the Switch and saw that it sold 280,000 units in April, and a lot of people were confused because they figured that the Switch would kind of stay on course because, of course, in March it did 906,000 units in the US, and now all of a sudden it does 280,000 units, so a lot of people like to just look at the numbers and figure, oh, the Switch is on a downturn here because, of course, if you drew it up on a graph, it would look just like that. But that's not the case here. I think there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Specifically, if you remember, in March they had to really pull more units in because the demand was so high, and they knew they could sell them easily considering their quarterly reports were about to come up and end their fiscal year there. They wanted to have a quarterly report for investors that showed a lot of Switch really units catching on and selling. So I believe what has happened here is they ramped up production, moved units that were initially allotted for April and moved them right up to March. Because if you remember, we had an initial sales estimate of 2 million units is what they wanted to get to us in March. They end up smashing that estimate with 2.74 million. So it's basically like if you added the 2 months together, either way, it would have been the same. I believe, I had to take a good guess, we were probably somewhere in the neighborhood between 3.5 to 3.75 million units overall for the Switch between March and April. And I think it would have been that way either way because those numbers that showed up in March would have just stayed in April anyway. And keep in mind, to get the production to keep going, you have to plan it well in advance. And like I said, if those numbers came over to March, April was going to suffer. Also, I don't think a lot of units were in stores the first 2 weeks of April. I think it was definitely later on, and especially as we got closer to, say, Mario Kart's release, because we do know a lot of units showed up for Mario Kart's release. In fact, I bet you a good chunk of that 280,000, it's very possible that half of that showed up 3 days before when Mario Kart came out, before NPD closed. So there's a good chance a lot of that sold right at the end of these reports. And really, if they did get to 3.5 to 3.75 million, which looking at Japan's numbers, just estimating through the UK and the rest of the world, they probably are right there, which would actually put it between the Xbox One and the PS4 for their first 2 months overall. And keep in mind, those were holiday times, which you're going to sell a lot more in the holidays than you will now. Now is when games don't sell much going into summer. That's usually the slow time. I mean, that's when a lot of seasons for TV end and a lot of people go on vacation. Games do kind of the same thing where no real big blockbuster games will come out back to back to back to back throughout the summertime, although Nintendo they are releasing 2 games, of course, in ARMS and Splatoon 2 in back-to-back months. That's not normally the case, though, for a lot of companies. But yes, I think that right now in the first 2 months, the Switch has sold about what we wanted it to, what everyone was thinking it would sell, around what the Wii U sold in its first 2 months. It's really going to come down to now to May. How does the Switch do in May? How does it do in June? We already know that they do have 2 big blockbuster games, like I said, coming up, which will help sales. But what does it do now? Because now, from here on, is when the Wii U started to fail, is when it really started to go down the tubes and not selling much at all. I mean, it took half a year to sell another 500,000 units for the Wii U. Yeah, it was that bad for a while, guys, in its first year. If the Switch can get around this and actually continue to sell as well as everyone thinks it will and hopes it will, then Nintendo is in good shape. They would have rebounded heavily from the Wii U, like I believe they will anyway, with how their lineup is looking and how the Switch is compared to the Wii U, where the Wii U was really that half step, I think, getting to the Switch. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can pull about at least another million overall from worldwide in May as well. If so, then they are definitely in good shape to go forward and probably get to their 10 million mark, despite the president of Nintendo saying, maybe not, it's going to be harder to get there than we think. I don't know. If they can continue production, and that's the big key, continue production well, they can get there. And then let's look at Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, because this game is insane in terms of sales. My gosh. Okay, so Mario Kart 8 is reported on 2 days. Okay, it had 2 days in the NPDs. It had the 28th and the 29th of April because that's when it ends, the 29th. Of course, its release date was the 28th. It sells 550,000 units in the United States alone. It was definitely a 1 million unit seller in its first weekend. Absolutely, with worldwide sales, definitely. And this is amazing. Now, they did say it was about 90,000 digital and 460,000 physical, which is interesting because that means that it was actually about 20% downloaded the game, as opposed to Zelda's 3% download rate, which makes sense considering when you were buying the Switch, you were probably buying Zelda at the store with it because you're going to go home and play it right away. You don't want to wait and download it. You're already there. Why not? Whereas Mario Kart's a little different. That's a game that we knew it was coming out, and it has that kind of pick up and play mentality where you're going to turn on the Switch, play it real quick, maybe you don't want to change the cartridges out and around. So I can see why more people maybe went with the convenience factor with that game as opposed to going out to the store and buying it physically. Either way, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a strong seller as expected. I have no idea where this thing's going to top out. I could easily see it breaking the 10 million mark at this rate, without a problem, because it's going to be around until the next Mario Kart comes out on the Switch, and that could be a while down the road. I think that's be a couple years, guys. So yeah, I could see Mario Kart 8 being that game that most people who buy a Switch are going to buy Mario Kart 8. They're going to buy Zelda. Those are two games that will be around for quite a while. And I don't think it's surprising to anyone with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe selling this much. It's just, at this point, it's how much is it going to sell? So now the next one up is ARMS. I'll be very curious to see how that sells since it's a new IP. And that's going to take us into our next topic here because we did have that Nintendo Direct with ARMS. If you want to check out a more in-depth look, go look at my video I did last night that I released. You can probably check it out now in the morning with this. But it does go a little more in depth. They gave us a Direct that had 3 new characters. They showed all kinds of extra stuff to the game that really made it complete, I think. Because up until this point, all we knew it as was just an exhibition mode type game. They gave us the full online modes. They gave us some crazy volleyball and basketball modes. And they made the game so much deeper with item unlocks, you gain currency, you rank up. They had full 20-player lobby systems online. It was insanity. So I think at this point, ARMS at least has the tools to be good. The only problem they run into is there's no namesake attached to it. Mario or Zelda, neither of those are in the title. So it's going to be a little harder, I think, to move, but they did things like make the DLC completely free, and I think realistically gave it a really cool art style and look, and it runs well at 60 frames per second. So it has every chance in the world to be good, and they have to attach another IP. I think this is very smart. Why not? Because if it works, you go into ARMS 2. Maybe it does become competitive, and all of a sudden esports pick it up, and then it's just off to the races with ARMS. And randomly, I don't know what happened here, but Ubisoft releases a trailer that shows South Park, the new one, South Park: The Fractured But Whole, and they do show a release date, which of course we've had release dates before for this game, so it's nothing new. But they did at least give us one that's a little closer, about 5 months out. It's gonna be October 17th for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And I'm excited for this game, but my problem is I have a hard time believing them right now because this game has been pushed back a couple times. And at least at this point, we know it has to be out before the end of this fiscal year because they promised their investors that would be the case. And this does fall right in line because as long as they get it out, I think by like February of the following year or March of the following year, they are okay and they completed their promise. October makes a lot of sense. Get it out for the holiday season. It will sell well leading up to the holidays, and really it looks like a fun game if you're a South Park fan. I like South Park. I will play it. I like the Stick of Truth. Speaking of which, if you do end up getting this, you get the Stick of Truth for free, just to, I guess, help that series out. So you play Stick of Truth, you play Fractured But Whole, and you have a good time. Oh, and right at the end of that ARMS Direct, we did see a Splatoon 2 trailer, or really just a quick look, I shouldn't even say trailer, quick look at the single player aspect. Yes, Splatoon 2 will have a full single player. Not much in the way of details right now. That actually might be something we see at E3 or its own Direct leading up to it. Now, I know Splatoon 2 mostly focuses on, of course, the competitive aspect, where it's more like an arena shooter kind of game, but still having a nice little single player there is fun, especially if you just don't feel like playing against other people. You just want to play by yourself. Maybe you're offline and you just want to hang out and really not be stressed in no competitive environment. Sure, why not? Improve the lore even. I know there was a whole manga that was coming out, coming over here to the States and everything as well. So That's great. I'm curious again what it'll entail, but maybe E3 will see a little more about that. We talked about Rap Rabbit in the last news wave, where it's like an interesting rhythm-based action-adventure RPG by the creators of Guitar Man and Parappa the Rapper. Well, apparently they had a Switch goal, right? Where they had it at $5 million, which is insane, by the way. $5 million for a Switch version is crazy. And they must have heard that, because they have managed to lower it now to $1.5 million. I think that's much more reasonable considering their overall goal just to make the game through Kickstarter is $1.1 million. So they need another $400,000 or so to then make the Switch version. Currently they're aiming for Steam and the PS4 going forward. I think those were just their initial choices. Probably the PS4 was their initial choice, but if you're already designing it on the computer, you might as well release it on Steam as well. Good to see that they at least put a Switch version in there at a more attainable rate. I'm not big on the rhythm adventure type games, but I know there's a lot of people out there who are, and if you're a Switch owner and you don't have any plans of getting on a PS4, there you go. You take a shot. Kickstarter, of course, be wary of Kickstarter because they don't always have to complete the item that they have up. We've run into this a bunch of times where it gets funded and it never gets made. However, it looks like these are actual legit designers and people running this, and it looks like there might even be a company about to back it as well. And guys, last bit of news is pretty cool. Star Ocean Till the End of Time, that was released on the PS4 in Japan, apparently is coming westward. It is coming to the United States, fully localized by Square Enix. It's going to come out May 23rd and be an interesting price point of $20.99. I assume that's just from the conversion rate from the Japanese store to the American store. But that does kind of bring up an interesting point that Square may be more interested in localizing some of these games. And I think you guys all know which one I'm thinking of course, the Secret of Mana collection that is on the Switch, or at least coming out on the Switch later on this year in the summertime over in Japan. And I, like many others, have been begging for this thing to be localized. I hope Square is going to start doing this, or at least, like I said, just slap an English option on there. But if you're doing something like bringing Star Ocean over to the PS4, which is about as, I'd say about as niche as Secret of Mana at this point, although I'm sure there's a lot of people who did play that on the PS2 just because the PS2 was a juggernaut at the time. And it was a good Star Ocean game, a very approachable Star Ocean game, I'd say. But now it's going to be available on the PS4, and that's, like I said, May 23rd at $20.99. I'm excited for this, although I have played this a couple times. There's a really weird spot in the story that a lot of fans did not like. But it's still a good game. If you're looking for a JRPG to play that is one that was pretty popular on the PS2, might as well check it out. And hopefully, if it sells well, Square will at least look at that and say, wow, American gamers want these games. Let's bring Secret of Mana over. And that's it for Newswave today, guys. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know what you think about anything we talked about today. I'm sure a lot of you guys want to talk about the Switch sales because it's a very interesting look with them putting out 280,000 US, down from 906,000. I just think they took a lot of the ones that were going to be in April and just jammed them into March. But those are my thoughts. Mario Kart, of course, pretty much took over the charts. Nothing was even close. Let me know what you think about those, guys. I'm very curious. Or maybe you're interested in the Star Ocean that's coming out, or you're excited for South Park or ARMS. Let me know what you guys think down below. I will see you next time.